Hi, I'm Cynthia Schiller. Please like and subscribe. So this is in response to a great comment from a viewer. It's based on borderline. It's in response to a video I did. I believe it was on Marilyn Monroe. So we have to be careful when we're trying to diagnose our narcissist. Are they really narcissists, or are they borderline, histrionic, bipolar, all these different things? A lot of times, if you notice with the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, that everybody kept thinking that Amber was a narcissist, and she was borderline and histrionic. So we have to be careful. So it's good to know all these different mental illnesses. This person has a great response. Also, a lot of people didn't think that Johnny Depp was a narcissist, and there's a lot of narcissistic traits that he portrayed. Um, and it's often kind of like with the cognitive dissonance, where we our mind likes to lessen things instead of seeing like the harsh things. So when there was two people, I think a lot of people just focused on Amber Heard being abusive when Johnny did some things too. So this is a really good thing. So this person goes, can't handle the truth, seems to be one of the symptoms of um bipolar. So during her job as a teacher assistant, she saw this female student, and she was so emotionally unstable and lived in a fantasy world. She hurt people and expect them not to react. She wanted them to love her unconditionally, and it was very frustrating. So this lady is in the school system too, and I keep saying that you kind of see these things, these certain traits that children have, and as adults we're supposed to outgrow some of these things. We're supposed to realize people aren't going to love us unconditionally if we're abusive to them, but children don't get that yet. They don't understand it, and I see it too. So being very emotionally unstable, living in this fantasy world, uh, that's a lot of the mental illness, is you're stuck in that childlike state. So she continues in a different post. Truth is something we must confront now or in the future, yet some are terrified of addressing it because they believe that delaying the acceptance would lower the level of sorrow or suffering caused by the truth. So we have to really take that to heart, that a lot of us stay in these relationships thinking that it's going to get better, and it actually just continues, prolonging the suffering instead of lessening it. And also people with mental illnesses, that if they would face it, they could get help and change. So she continues on, that it's never a circumstance, and as a result of avoiding it, people end up in greater agony and suffering. So that's excellent advice that we really need to take to heart and kind of analyze for our own lives. Because when we avoid it instead of accepting that this just is not a healthy relationship, and we've tried everything and we've been unsuccessful, sometimes it even gets worse, and we're just prolonging that suffering because we're too afraid to leave our comfort zone, but we're not even comfortable in our comfort zone with our person. So people avoid facing the reality because they are afraid of losing something or someone. So whether it's a person with a mental illness or just somebody struggling, we have CPTSD now, um, and we're afraid. You know, the unknown is scary sometimes. We're afraid of losing somebody that we loved, but were we loved back? And it's draining when the two sides don't match. If both people love each other, it works. If both people hate each other, they know what to do. They just leave each other alone. Um, but when it's off balance, it's toxic. So what are we losing? And sometimes we don't even know what we're losing because we don't know who our person is. Mental illness is where they're portraying themselves as different people all the time. And we don't know exactly what we're losing. Are we losing this knight in shining armor, or are we losing, this demon? So people are afraid of the truth, because believing it damages their ego and identity. So our narcissist already lacks their identity. And this is a good statement too. When we don't want to leave, we don't want to no longer be so and so's girlfriend or wife or husband. We lose kind of our identity. Or now we have to move homes and things like that. And we have to be careful because that's what the narcissist is doing is they're staying with somebody for status, for financial gain, for things like that. So we have to be careful that we're not staying because we're too lazy to move, or too scared. I'm being honest about that. It is scary. And starting over, but we have to know who our identity is. We're not Mrs. So and so, Mr. Husband so and so. We have to be us, whether our person is with us or not. And we have to be careful that it doesn't damage our ego, that we see it as we're the failure. So she continues on, Freud's personality model may help increase our understanding of personality disorders and their development, which is so true. If you really listen to Freud with the id, ego, superego, it does really explain the mental turmoil and our self needs and our needs for others and who we are. So BPD is egocentric, which means a person with a personality disorder often doesn't believe they have a problem. That's a big thing with a lot of mental illnesses, narcissism included, that I'm not the problem, because they're living their life, they're reacting to what they feel, they're in that childlike state where they kids don't really grasp the things that they're doing. They don't think it's a big deal and they don't understand why it's a big deal. Or if you explain it to them in one ear, out the other, they might understand it for a minute, but they go right back to doing the same exact actions. So same with our narcissist, borderline personality disorder. If you put up a boundary, I can't handle you acting that way. Okay. It's just like the kids, okay. And they instantly go back to doing what they're doing. And egocentric, exactly. So with borderline personality disorder, you have an intense fear of abandonment or instability, and you may have difficulty tolerating being alone. So that's like children. Children get scared. You see them first day of kindergarten, they're freaking out. And that's kind of what the borderline goes through is you go to the store and you're 2 minutes late, they're going to freak out on you sometimes. And they just have learned in their life that the people that they wanted to stay didn't, or they didn't feel that person's love stayed. Um, so they're afraid that they're not going to be good enough, and they don't have their own identity to stay alone. They need somebody there to comfort them, to uh, deal with their needs, to listen to them. They have a lot of instability because of ups and downs and things that go through their minds. So all of a sudden you're sitting with them and they bring something up and you're like, why are we arguing now? Like, where'd this come from? They'll pick apart things. So yet inappropriate anger, impulsiveness, frequent mood swings may push others away. And that's interesting how they do things. The inappropriate anger, that's from the mental turmoil they're going on. Impulsiveness, they need to stay busy, they don't know what they want. So they'll just do things just like kids, like they get up and you're like, what are you doing? Or they forget about the rules, they just start walking out the door, they just start writing on other people's papers, tearing things, just get up and do things. And frequent mood swings, and they do push other people away. So even though you want to have a loving and lasting relationship, they're tearing it apart. People with antisocial personality disorders, also known as right-wing authoritarian personality, has a strict superego, is what she says. And this is interesting, on all the different people in politics. They do have strong egos and super egos. And you look at Trump, you know, he's very bold in it's crazy how we're in this anti-bullying era, and he's pretty harsh on the way he talks to people and condescending. So I'm not getting into politics whether I like him, don't like him, but I don't like the way he talks to people. Put it that way. I don't like the way he talks to people, and very cocky. I do think he's a hard worker, but he's very cocky. So there are certain personalities that are more prevalent in certain professions, such as politics. And so that superego, which controls a weak ego that is unable to cope with the strong impulses of the id. They dislike less privileged individuals and see them as inferior and deserve bad treatment. So it's sad how people do treat people, whether they're handicapped or not as pretty or financially distraught, that they do get different treatment. And I saw a video on the, what is it, pretty privilege, and there is something to that. And there's also something, I'm 6'1", and they did a study on tall people make an average of $768 more a year or something like that. But if you think about it, with attorneys, that the taller ones are going to seem more strong, and it's just height. There's some brilliant shorter people. It's weird how the mind picks up on certain things. You know, just like we do a lot of evil stuff with dark colors, and the heroes are usually in white or the light colors. And we got to be careful on that with society, because some people's skin are dark colored. Doesn't mean that they're evil, but it's interesting how our mind does that, and we got to treat people the right way. So I hope that didn't come across the wrong way, because it's meant that we talk about the dark side and the light side, and we can't put that onto people's skin color. So sorry. However, a person with borderline, bipolar, and histrionic personality disorders have a strict ID, which controls a weak ego that is unable to cope with the weak impulses of the superego. Many people with such disorders are overly sexual, emotionally unstable, have mood swings, and have childish thinking. So we saw that with Amber Heard. She was both histrionic and borderline, and she was overly sexual, emotionally unstable, mood swings, childlike thinking. With her little I didn't punch you, I hit you, things like that, as opposed to, yeah, I hurt you. She's focusing on, unless you say it was, I hit you instead of punch you, like she cut his finger off. So, and just the way that, I don't know, just the way that they talk and they think, it's like, I don't want to take accountability. I did it this way. And if you're going to say I did it that way, they're not focusing on the right thing. And a lot of sometimes narcissists too, especially female narcissists, will use their body. So it's crossing. There's different things. That's why the more we learn, because we could say our person seduced us all the time. Were they necessarily a narcissist? Or were they possibly borderline or histrionic? So the ego is your worst enemy, she continues, because it is always afraid of death. It keeps you crippled. So there are three kinds of deaths: physical death, emotional death, something inside of you dies on the death of a loved one, um, or the death of a deep relationship. Psychological death, this is the death of the ego, and it can happen permanently when you are awakened. But as the nature of the mind, the ego keeps thinking in one or another way of death and remains terrified. The day ego is dropped, you attain your soul, your true self. And that is why ego is considered the worst enemy in spirituality. So the day the ego is dropped, that's when we become whole. When there's no uh, mental turmoil. And so I just thought it was very interesting on what she had to say about it, because what keeps us crippled is sometimes we want that perfect relationship and we're too scared to say, this is not it. And we also have to realize that there is no perfect relationship. And that's where we start struggling. It's like, there is no perfect relationship. Should I be happy with what I have? And in a healthy relationship, they had that 80-20 rule. I did a video on that. So if you type in 80/20, you can view that. But where, you know, some people suggest you should be 80% happy with things, and understand 20% that is the give and take. And that's as close to perfect as we can hope for. That's just that study. So where are we with our narcissist or our borderline person? Are we 80-20, 90-10? Are we like 10-90? Because as it progresses, when we're dealing with people, just like at the school, I have kind of a varied schedule where I'm allowed 1 hour planning a day, but it doesn't always work out that I get that planning every day. So certain days I have 2 hours of planning. And then on Wednesdays, I have something called MTSS, where I kind of sub in the different classrooms for 2 hours so the teachers can have certain meetings with our behavior specialist or the principal. So sometimes those 2 hours I work, sometimes I don't. So on Wednesdays, I do have a planning. So I only teach 3 hours a day on Wednesdays. So my exposure to the kids in that childlike state, that's all right, you know. But on Thursdays, I have a special meeting in the morning before school. Plus, I have every class that day, back to back. We have 2 minutes in between our classes, which by the time the kids get out of the classroom and enter it, I have no time in between classes. So it's constant neediness and fighting and arguing and drama and loudness and not following directions, doing their own thing. And it's draining. Like, I came home from school today. It's what? What time is it now? It's 5:37 in the morning, and I'm doing a video because I slept all day. I was exhausted. Came home from school. I was too tired to even go upstairs, and just slept on my couch. I never sleep on my couch, but it's Friday and it was an exhausting week. So our exposure to childlike drama, which is what we get with somebody with mental illness, is exhausting. And we have to take care of ourselves. So are we doing right by ourselves? Are we doing right by ourselves? We're dealing with things that can destroy us or drain us. Um, so, being a teacher, you kind of enter the war zone knowing what is up. Uh, and that's why a lot of teachers don't make it past 5 years, because some of it is from administration, but some of it is the frustration. I see the change in the kids. I'm scared for what's going to happen down the road, because with COVID, the kids missed out on 1 to 2 years, depends on your area, of how to handle other people. And the frustrations the parents probably went through trying to balance working from home, more financial struggles that they lost their job or it was cut back, uh, a change in routine, uh, just the lack of social interaction, activities. Um, it it is causing a change in the children, and that's during the developmental stage. So it's interesting. I have sold costumes, and I've done dance recitals, professional cheer outfits, but I also sold exotic dancewear, and I went into the clubs because when I first started college, I wanted to kind of do a dissertation, do my for my doctorate in psychology. I wanted to write about the sexual abuse and kind of study um, exotic dancers, uh, just to see. And almost all of them have been sexually abused. And I met some great women. There were some that were nurses that just made more money dancing. But it's interesting to see what things in our childhood can affect how we act, whether, and I didn't complete the study, so this is just uh, superficial. Um, you know, not all strippers do drugs, but there does seem to be a high incidence of drug use, um, higher than the normal. But are they adding stressors to themselves by being an object in a sense? Uh, because that's where our pain is that we're being treated like objects when we're with somebody who just lashes out on us. As far as a narcissist, they just see us as an object. And the borderline, they just are unstable, um, needy, and it takes from us. So the scary part is not knowing what we're going to get. That's what gets scary, because every day is a roller coaster. And roller coasters can be like literal roller coasters can be fun for a while. But to live on a roller coaster, you're missing out on the quality of life. And during those roller coaster things, we have all these things going on in our brain. It's the highs and lows and highs and lows and highs and lows that cause us to have brain fog. It's almost like a shaken baby syndrome, where the person with a mental illness figuratively, um, as an analogy, is shaking our brain up and causing damage to us. So even though our head's not moving, our brain waves are, and that's where we get damaged. So I just thought it was a really interesting comment from this viewer. So please comment below. What are your thoughts on this? And what are some of the roller coaster things you've gone through? How did you handle it? Did things turn out good? Did they turn out bad? Were there any tricks to the trade, or was it always just a losing battle? So please comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.